Let's learn something really quick.
If you got the time, absolutely. And you got the discipline, there's no question about it.
I love that. Yeah, that's a great practice to put into your everyday life, you guys.
You generally regret the things you don't do, not the things you did do. Let me say it that way.
Mic drop. This was just awesome. I love meeting my guests in person, and it's a whole nother animal, and the energy is just electric. You guys, this is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. What is good, everyone? This is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. As always, bring incredible guests from all over the world, so sit back, relax, and tune in. My next guest is the founder and CEO of Simplero. He is also a speaker, author, investor, and spiritual business coach, and he's been a coder since he was 5. Please welcome Calvin Correli. Calvin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's fantastic to be here with you.
You're a very interesting person.
All right.
Very diverse.
Your lips to God's ear.
Well, I think, you're perfect fit for the show, label free, right? You haven't put a lot of yourself to be stuck in any box, to be a coder since you're 5 to where you are today. A very interesting journey for sure. So why don't you first kind of tell us a little bit about being a coder from 5 to where you are today as a spiritual business coach?
It's a great journey, really. I got into programming very young because both of my parents were programmers.
Oh,
so they started programming when it was punch cards that you punched holes in, and the computer was the size of a room, very, very early. And so my dad taught me since I was very young, and I loved it. I was really good at it. I got very, very good at programming, in part because I was so emotionally broken inside that computers became my refuge. People are scary, they say mean stuff, and it makes me feel stuff, and I don't like that. And I can't control them, but computers I can control. So that became my refuge. And so it's been a major journey to get out of that cave, if you will, to get out of that place and actually heal some of that wounding and become who I am today. It's been quite a journey.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like a lot of people that are kind of coders and into that whole tech space probably have that same mentality, computers are my best friend, they're not going to hurt me, they're not going to do things to me, and I that just makes a lot of sense. And I've never heard anybody say that before. And I used to work in tech sales, so I work with a lot of people.
I think the best programmers are emotionally broken people. I think we are. It's what makes us really good at it.
Does something happen for you to be emotionally broken, or is just something that I don't know, because you said your mother and father had the same background, and was there trauma there?
I mean, for sure. I think the way that this stuff works is that we come into life with some pattern or something that we want to work through in this lifetime, and so we organize our circumstances so that it brings us to that situation, right?
Yeah.
So I came into life with a sort of deep feeling that there's something wrong with me. I'm fundamentally flawed, broken. Shame is another word, but it's the deep feeling that I'm wrong somehow. And then I created situations that then reinforced that for me. But someone else would come into my life without that pattern, and they would interpret whatever happened in a different light. They'd be like, "What are you doing? You're an idiot." Versus I'm an idiot, right? Yeah. And so I think that's how we organize stuff.
That's interesting. I've never heard anybody say that before, that we organize circumstances potentially just keep us in that same cycle of that feeling.
Or to bring that up so that we can heal it in this lifetime, so we can overcome it in this lifetime. It's I think it's life is like the movies. We go to the movies to be entertained or to learn something.
Yeah.
And we go to planet Earth to live a lifetime so that we can either be entertained or work something out or learn something, right? Grow in some way. Yeah. And that's the invitation of each lifetime, is what are we here to work on this time?
For sure. And I feel like if we keep creating those circumstances and we don't learn that lesson the first time, you keep creating it over and over and over again until you finally get the lesson and you can grow past it.
100%. Yeah, exactly. Right. Life keeps showing you where you're not free. And that's it'll just be getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And some people never choose to face that, and some people do eventually, and some people do it very easily, and it just needs a wing with a feather, and other people need sledgehammer over the heads, or like different situations, different times, and different patterns, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I've definitely gone through my fair share, but I like the way that you put it, that we make circumstances to learn how to either grow through them or have to go through them several times. Because I do agree, we can be our worst enemy, and until we learn the lesson and learn to or grow past it, we're going to have to continue to learn that lesson over and over.
Yeah. And it's wild how it works, right? You let me see if I can think of an example. Like I had a thing where I would keep feeling like a victim over like, oh, and like I remember one time I had to take my car, this was years ago, I had to take the car to the garage to get something fixed, and then I had to take the bus to get there, and then it was like dark and rainy and cold, and I just felt so sorry for myself that I had to do this. And it's like I would keep running into situations where like I would feel that same feeling. And then once I really got in there and felt that deep victim, and recognized the fact that I was never a victim, and all the things that I'd spent years of my life blaming other people for were always like something that I created and something that I had a choice in. Once I really came to terms with that victim side of myself, it was like the situation stopped happening.
Yeah.
It's like, it's magic.
Yeah. It feels like magic once you can get to that place. I mean, I've recently worked through some things too, and my mindset is so different around what I had been experiencing, and it's taken me 40 plus years to get here. And here's my thought process. It's like, there's no longer a seat for me at that toxicity table.
Oh yeah. I like that.
You know what I mean? And that's just like, I can love you from a distance, but I have no interest or desire to sit at that table with you anymore.
Yeah. That's great.
And that was very hard for me to embrace that mindset. Very difficult.
Yeah. My aunt, my mother's sister, passed away a couple of years ago. So my mom is also a very spiritual, open person. Her sister was not as much. And my mom told me about how her and her sister would, every once in a while, they'd go see some kind of psychic, some medium, some clairvoyant or something.
Yeah.
And they would go together, but they would go talk to the person separately.
Okay.
And her sister would always come out from these meetings, and my mom would be like, what did he say? What came out? And she's like, oh, they all say the same thing. I don't want to do that.
Interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Whoa, something there. We don't know. She took it to the grave. We don't know what that was, but yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
She definitely did not want to do the work.
I know. She was like, that, not going there.
Yeah. Well, I think it's hard for some people to kind of look in the mirror and see their truth, and they'd rather be in denial or whatever. It's a cycle that they don't want to fix it. So I've got people in my family that are like that too.
Yeah. And what I see is that most people, they will do work till a certain level, and then it gets like too close, and they stop, they back out. They're like, oh, I'm done. I see it even with influencers, brands, gurus, teachers, where you can say like they've overcome so much, and then you're just like, oh, and then they stopped. Then they came face to face with their deepest fear, their deepest pain. And I have a lot of empathy for that, but I'm also curious about it, because like, you did this work so much, but like here, like, what's next?
Yeah. I feel like our work is never done. Like, we should always be trying to evolve and to grow and to morph into a better version of ourselves. I feel like that's a lifelong, if you have that open mindset, I feel like that's a lifelong journey for us.
It is, for sure. Yeah. And time doesn't exist. Time is an illusion of the mind, right? So like, whoa, like now what, right? Like all time exists in the now, and like we have all these infinite possibilities and timelines all at the same time. So like, which timeline do you want to be on? Yeah.
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 Very true.
Like,
how is it being a coder, which is very logic based, to being a spiritual business coach, which is like completely opposite?
It's fascinating, because one of my quotes is, spirituality done right is just reality.
Well, I like that.
I feel like a lot of people a lot of spiritual people and like people in the spiritual world, and I've definitely done this myself, like it becomes a belief system that's separate from reality. It's like, well, there's 3D reality, but there's this other thing that I sort of kind of believe, but don't really believe.
Yeah.
and it becomes a little bit make-believe. And I think that when we get far enough with science, not what's currently practiced, which I call scientism, which is another religion, another dogma, right? There are certain things that you can't challenge, that you can't question. You're not actually allowed to follow the scientific method, because then you get excommunicated from the scientific community, and you don't get funding and grants and all of that stuff, right? Yeah. If we actually practiced science as the scientific method, which is all about asking questions and falsifying things, we would find that everything that they've talked about in the religions of the past, we can now actually validate scientifically. Sure. So it's like science is the new language of religion, is like religion 2.0. So for me, it's very rational, in reality based, in like, well, how does the world actually work? Most of us were aware that Einstein lived and had some pretty smart ideas, and there are people who had better ideas since him even. But we still tend to live in a Newtonian 3D reality most of the time. Yeah. Then we talk about love and feelings, and we behave differently in certain areas, but mostly we still live in a Newtonian world in our minds.
Yeah. So when did you want to, what was your journey like becoming a spiritual business coach? Because that stems from somewhere, right? We all have these experiences that puts us on this a different path, and we're somewhere we never thought we'd be. And so for you, like Coder at 5 to all these different things, and now a spiritual business coach, what made you want to go down that path?
It was not a choice. It was a door that was open as a kid. I was very open, attuned to, messages, insights. I just had a sense that I understood what was going on inside of people below the surface, where everybody would react to the surface level. Like, he's angry. He's like, why does he do that? I'd be like, no, he's in pain. Like, was actually like, he's feeling this, he's feeling insecure, he's feeling hurt, whatever. And this is how it's coming out like that. I had that sense. But then later in life, in my teenage years, I decided that I couldn't trust that side. And this was like, mom, dad, mom was the spiritual, dad was not spiritual.
Yeah.
I was very scared of my dad. I love him. He's great. But as a kid, I was very
like most boys, most boys are scared of dads.
He's like had all his anger and all his temper. And as a kid, I felt like I sought out my mom a lot more because I was scared of my dad, but I felt like she couldn't protect me from him. So when he got in his anger temper tantrums and started hitting or yelling or whatever, I wasn't crazy, but as a kid, right? It lands like really hard. So unconsciously, I made the decision in my mind that I can't trust the quote unquote spiritual to protect me. So when shit hits the fan.
Sure.
So I let I suppressed that side of me, and I went into like coding and like all the practical and like doing all the things, like completely dismissing all the spiritual stuff. And then it was in my early 30s when I got to a point in my life where I felt like a complete loser, a complete failure. Like my business is not working, my marriage is not working, I felt like a complete failure in all accounts.
Yeah.
And it really took me down a deep place. And I started to get help, coaching and therapy and other kinds of help. And I started working with a coach that turned out to be a spiritual teacher more than a coach. And that's where I started to reawaken that side of myself.
Oh, wow. That had to be like born again.
Right. Yeah. And it was really painful, but it was remembering for me. Yeah. So that was how it always felt. It was like, oh yeah, I know this, but it's fighting my left brain of like.
That's why I asked that.
Right. Yeah. It's like the lower mind kind of the left brain, right? But it's the protective part of the left brain. It's like, it's not the open, actually logical, rational, because like you can reason yourself to the spiritual truths, but you can also reason yourself out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like with anything.
Right. I remember reading, I promise you, I read this in the Walter Isaacson biography of Steve Jobs, and I've tried to find this quote. I can't find it. So maybe like I chat GPT hallucinated this quote. I remember reading that, like, he asked him on his deathbed, do you believe in God, or do you consider yourself spiritual, or something like that? And Steve's answer was, Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, I do. Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, I don't. And Sundays, I'm not really sure. What I hear is that he had that conflict inside himself as well. Right.
I think I've read that somewhere too.
Yeah.
Like somewhere in a meme or like a post on social media where scrolling and something with Steve Jobs. And that, I mean, but that makes a lot of sense. I think that conflict lives in all of us, right? Until we decide to like just let life flow and really like reach that spiritual elevation where we're not like forcing things anymore. We're just trusting that we are living in our purpose and in our truth.
Yeah.
And it's a very scary place to decide to go. But really, when you just make that decision to step into that and just let life flow, beautiful things happen.
It's like that I saw on a sign some years ago, like, no, God didn't leave and leave in charge or something like that. Yeah. It's like he didn't just disappear and you be in charge of things. He's still there. There's a video that came out maybe like 15 years ago, maybe a little less, around that time, where they, for the first time, they had MRI images of what life looks like from conception to birth. So from the egg gets impregnated by the sperm cell and starts dividing and dividing more, and then you have like the spine starts to form, and the hands and the fingers and the heart, the teeth, and I forget what that. They don't have teeth when they come out, but anyway, like all the nose and the eyes and all that stuff. I don't know how this works. It's been a few years, but the point is, like, you see that like in crazy intelligence that's at work,
right?
Of like finding a human being in 9 months.
Yeah,
like it's fucking insane. Yeah. It's crazy. And then we get born, and then we think that intelligence went away.
Right.
It didn't. It's still fucking there, but we're fighting it.
I like that. That was pretty profound. That was really good. Fred, what do our listeners need to do to take the next step with you?
Deanna, it's really easy. First step with me, as with all the people I've helped, is to have a chat with me. If you're struggling with infidelity or broken trust or incessant fighting and arguing or being disrespected, that's making you really unhappy in your relationship, then give me a call.
If you're struggling in your relationship, take that next step with Fred. Just like Wendy, who said she found Fred after having one unsuccessful relationship after another. She says, I learned how to respect myself and set healthy boundaries. She finally has a reciprocal relationship with a person who adores her as much as she adores them. Thank you, Fred, for all that you taught me. Without it, she would not be where she is.
All those thousands of clients I've helped over the years, they started with that first chat with me.
You guys don't hesitate to go book that call with Fred. He's willing to help. Take advantage of the free call and see where it can take you. You never know. It can't hurt. Why spiritual business? Why for business? Why is it important for people that are in business to tap into that spiritual side of themselves?
Because every business problem is a personal problem that shows up in business. And every personal problem, if you pull the thread, it turns out to be a spiritual problem.
Interesting. Can you give us an example?
Well, something that came up for me as I was looking at what needs to happen for me to unlock the next level of growth in my business, I was meditating on that. And then one of the things that came up was this old pattern of mine of I'm flawed, I'm broken, which I've done work with, and I've like things have really changed, but it's one of those wounds for me that's so deep apparently. And I think we all have versions of that, but it just keeps showing up in different ways and gets better, but it shows up again. And so that one showed up again as like, running from an energy of like, there's something wrong with me and there's something wrong with my product. It's not good enough. And like everybody in the world can sing my praises and I just
right.
You're amazing. The product's amazing. But if that belief is still there at the core, well, like it's not going to work, right? Like the marketing, the growth, et cetera, is not going to be at the level that it could be and that I want it to be.
Yeah.
So there's always some underlying belief or underlying core emotion that is causing this problem to exist for you.
Yeah.
And we can move at the level of 3D, of the level of matter as much as we want. But if the imprint that comes from that belief or that emotion has something else, like, it's going to win.
Yeah. Eventually it'll win if you don't.
Yeah.
Would you consider that? I think a lot of people would call that like imposter syndrome. Do you consider that imposter syndrome, or do you just consider it like a spiritual issue that you've never dealt with, that you've buried deep inside, that you need to really work through?
That's a great question. I mean, it's definitely got elements of imposter in there. We have wounds at different levels. I think certain wounds are like soul wounds that just cut really deep. I don't believe that doesn't mean that they can't be overcome, but there's a tendency to, like, every stage of your growth, you're going to revisit the same patterns over again, right? So it's like, it's the same thing, but there's just levels to it. And every time that you need to progress to another level, it's back to the same thing and just peeling another layer off of it. So yeah.
Yeah. I think anyone at any level of success, that's reaching any level of success, is going to have some of that turmoil inside of them. And I think that just makes us human, right? And have our own unique experiences. I look at it as an opportunity to really like grow even past the point that you thought was possible. And when you can stop like creating that like stopgap, I guess, in your soul, your mind, your heart, once you can push past that, I think that just the sky's the limit. And I think that's what we all attain to achieve, right?
Hell yeah, yeah. And I think the reason why business and spirituality as well, I think we're here on earth to share our unique vibration, our unique energy frequency with other people. And for those of us who are called to run a business, to build a business, the business is the vehicle for us to do that.
It's giving goosebumps.
Yeah. But that's the point of business.
Yeah.
Like for me anyway, like I know for other people, like the point is just like, this is a machine that makes me money and then I do something else. But for me, where business gets really interesting is when it becomes that vehicle for me to share that like transmission, if you will, with the world. And that requires me to be very clear in me and, love me and appreciate me. If I'm hating myself and feeling shame and guilt, like it's going to come out distorted, right? So the clearer we can make that channel where we're not even trying to judge it. Like, it's not my job to judge this thing. It's not mine.
Right.
It's just me being the channel for this energy, this transmission. Like, yeah, I'm just here to serve it. The people who want it can have it, and people who don't want it, just do something else. It's fine.
Well, this has been awesome. I love it when we get deep. It is just so amazing and just exceeds my wildest expectations whenever I can have a conversation like this. Calvin, can you please tell people where they can find you, connect with you, and learn more about what you do and just to support you?
100%. We go to my Instagram, Calvin Correli, my name, CalvinCorreli. I'm tricky with the spelling because the last name is made up.
Right.
We didn't worry about that. But yeah, go follow me on Instagram and hit me up in the DMs. Tell me you found me on the Label Free podcast. I named my company Simplero because I'm all about making things simple. So the software that I created is all about making the business of coaching simple by running everything in one platform. But also what I put together is just the simplest path that I've seen that successful coaches use to get to at least $10,000 a month and beyond.
Very cool. All right, you guys, we'll put those links in the show notes. So go ahead and give him a follow on Instagram. Go send him a message if you're interested. If you're a coach and interested in working with him, wanting to learn more, or just to follow him and see what kind of content he puts out there. That's the best way to support a content creator. Let's just do a fun fact really fast before we ask for last words of wisdom and advice. Tell the audience about your last name.
All right. So I was born in Denmark and my name was Laspil, which was really like, I never liked it. And it was really complicated in the US. So my wife got into numerology and actually when I met her, she had already changed her name using numerology. And then I was like, all right, let's try this thing. And so, ended up changing my name. It's like about 10 years ago and I haven't regretted it. It's been like life's been fantastic ever since in the ways that the numerology predicted. So that's pretty awesome.
Wow.
Yeah. We had to make up when we did it the first time when we did it there, we had to do it in Denmark where we're from.
Okay.
And so there's some legal rules about last names. You have to pick one that's either Nielsen or Anderson or Hansen or something like that, or you have to pick a name that nobody else in Denmark has.
Okay.
So we ended up coming up with a name that 0 people in Denmark has, or I think 0 people in the world has that last name. Maybe with that spelling anyway. Yeah.
Interesting. Very cool. All right. What's some last words of wisdom or advice you'd like to leave with us today?
Trust in yourself, trust in God, trust in life, trust in your unique transmission. Like, stop questioning.
Yeah.
Just let it flow to people.
Yeah. I love that. Beautiful. Just
I need you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I have learned to just let things flow and just trust. And it's hard to let go of that idea of control. But when you can let things just go and trust that things will flow right, miraculous things happen. Calvin, thank you so much for such an insightful conversation. It was truly unexpected, but very much appreciated. So thank you so much. We really appreciate you.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure. It was great to be with you.
You're welcome. You guys, this is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. As always, don't forget to subscribe, follow, rate, review, comment, share, all those good things. And I'll be back soon with more dynamic guests.